Hi, it's Louisa Dahl, and welcome to the Interactive Minds podcast, where I talk with passionate marketers, innovators, and digital leaders about their specific recipes for success. In today's show, I interview Claire Austin from LinkedIn talking about content, results, trends, and more. Here's 3 things you're going to learn. 1, the types of content currently getting results. 2, why customer listening is so important. And 3, the opportunities you can leverage right now on LinkedIn. Let's get into it. Today I'm speaking with Claire Austin from LinkedIn. Claire is in the role of content consultant for Australia and New Zealand and is involved as a social impact lead in Sydney. Now, I first met Claire when she spoke for us at the 2018 Digital Summit, so I'm super excited to have her back with us today. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you so much, Louisa. It's so nice to be doing this again. It's been a while since we last collaborated.
It has, definitely. It's gone pretty quick. So tell us, Claire, you've been in marketing for over 10 years now. How would you summarise your career to date in a sentence?
Oh my gosh, that is a tough one to start with, Louisa.
I know. Sorry.
In a sentence, okay, I would say my career is eclectic. Eclectic mix of very random things that have led me to great opportunities.
Awesome. So can you take us through some of those eclectic areas and why would you refer to it as eclectic?
Yeah, I think I've worked in a lot of different industries, both in the UK. So I'm originally from Liverpool in England and spent a lot of my career down in London, working in charity sector, working for a Michelin star chef, helping launch a second restaurant. I've worked in small businesses, helping them kind of set up and grow. And over here, working in agency, again, small business, and now in LinkedIn. So I feel like I've seen a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah.
And it's really helped me, I guess, to evolve and pivot and think about like problem solving is that in every situation, it's very much like, okay, what's new? What's happening? How do we change this and pivot quickly?
Do you think that's typical of marketing roles these days? Is it about problem solving?
I think it is. I think that initiative to be able to kind of not just keep doing the same thing is critical, right? You need to have those opportunities where you say, okay, well, yeah, we've been doing it this way for a while, but now how do we change it, and how do we either change it for us or our client to make them stand out? We often talk about something which is around, do you want people to know you and kind of to be aware of what you're doing, or do you want to be famous?
Yes.
And I think if you ask any celebrity out there, no one's ever said, yeah, I kind of want people to know who I am. They all say I want to be famous. I think it's the same thing in marketing. If we're doing this and we're doing it properly, you have to get to that next level.
Interesting. Yeah, I always say with marketing that there's no right or wrong answers. And I think that's something that, is increasingly the case as time goes on and as we have more and more transparency. There's no one right way to do anything. So I think that it is that continual evolution and problem solving and, figuring out the next way to do something that's going to deliver results that keeps it interesting.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So looking back on your career, what has been a highlight or a turning point for you?
Highlights of my career. I'd actually say one of the highlights was when I was much younger, I did a ski season in France, and I loved it. So I was a chalet hostess for like 3 months, and I don't know what it was about the role. Like I just absolutely loved hosting people. It was like having a dinner party every single night, and you got to meet different people every week. I had, and we were a pretty nice chalet. So we had 1 week I had Gino D'Acampo, who's a famous chef maybe more over in the UK and in Italy. He's on the telly a lot. So him and his family were staying in the chalet. I had aerospace engineers there. It's just such an eclectic mix of different people. I just loved it.
Wow.
So that was for me something that made me realize just how much I love being around people and how much I love hosting and collaborating.
Yeah. I have to say I stayed at a chalet in France a long pre-kids time ago, and it was so a highlight. I just hope one day I can get back and do that again, because it was such an amazing experience to have everything done for you. I loved it.
And just being in the mountains and by the fire and the mulled wine. Oh, it's just beautiful. It's so nice.
Yes. Yeah. We need to start talking about skiing next. But no, we're going to come back to marketing. I like that though. I like that you, valued and identified what works for you and what resonates.
Yeah, I think when I look back on that time, I don't think I realized how much it actually influenced where I am now.
How does that play into the type of work you do now?
Yeah, I think I took a lot of the skills I learnt now and was able to apply them when I came into working in smaller businesses to really think about, I guess, different people who work in those businesses and how you speak to them in different ways to, help you get where you want to deliver your message. And that for me was... it just built my confidence and made me realize that you can't speak to anyone. It's just more about how you deliver the message and getting them on board and making them happy and understanding who they are.
Yes.
So it's just a real kind of, I guess, listening exercise, which sounds simple, but I was actually thinking about it yesterday. I was thinking, do I write a blog post on this? And I thought it might be a little bit too much, but it really amazes me, Louisa, sometimes, like the amount that people don't listen.
Yeah.
And they come out of stuff and they've only heard half a conversation. And I often think it's such a big thing for a marketer. You need to be able to listen to your customers, to the customer service team, to the sales team, and to really gather all of this information to come up with how you're going to then deliver that message out to an audience. So do you think it's a key skill for a marketer?
How do you think marketers are getting that kind of input these days? Because, we have so much data at our fingertips to maybe do some of that listening. Is it beyond that? Do we need to be talking to our customers as well?
100%. Yeah. I think we've pivoted to a point where we thought we could get everything from data, and everyone's become very reliant on that. But I'd say that's now changing again, where people are realizing that the data's not enough and going back to doing more customer focus groups, speaking to the sales team more. And, we're definitely, it's pretty much, the conversation at every conference at the moment around sales and marketing collaboration.
Yeah.
And the best, that we've got a client who we work with who the marketing and the sales team have a whip every Monday morning and talk about, the different pieces of content, what's happening, what's working, what's not. And I just think that's fantastic, like to have that open converse between the two teams, just really important for them to just really understand each other.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. All right. So tell us a little bit about your current role. What does it involve for you at this stage?
Yeah. So my current role at LinkedIn is, I have an amazing role. I'm very, very lucky. So in region, I support our sales team. So our sales team is made up of obviously account managers and customer success managers. And the idea is that they are going out to market, working with different clients, and hopefully getting the best solution for them on our platform, and helping them to optimize that on a daily and weekly basis.
Yep.
And my role is to support them. So it's kind of, if you like, almost like extra kind of added value that the guys can tap into. And yeah, I guess the idea is I facilitate marketing sessions with our clients and help them to unlock potential with their strategies. So it's all about getting them to look at things in different ways, through a different lens, brainstorming ideas, and getting them to collaborate in one room to take them from good to great. And you'll be amazed at often I'll be in a room with clients who don't even know each other and they're shaking hands as they walk in the door. And they work in the same building. So it really is this collaborative space where I hope when they leave, they have some outcomes about how they can bring their strategy to life.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? But I'm sure it happens all the time that, we do work in a bit of a cocoon sometimes, and it must feel good that you're bringing that collaboration together.
Yeah, I'm very privileged. It's fantastic. Yeah. I really enjoy it.
So tell us, what does the sales team kind of focus on at LinkedIn? What are the products, broadly speaking? Obviously, we don't have time to go fully into the depth of this, but can you let us know at a high level, what are the key things that you're supporting from that angle?
Yeah, so we have quite a few different business lines within LinkedIn, and the one that I support is marketing solutions. So this is the opportunity for brands to I guess, basically sell to audiences on LinkedIn, the different products and services. But I think it goes bigger than that. It's not just about selling your product or service. It's about being able to help people who need a particular solution. So it's more around, say, for example, small businesses looking, how do I be more productive, or how do I find the right, financial advice or financial support that I need. And this is where the teams do a lot of work in trying to really understand what's the actual business objective here, and what are we trying to do to help these customers. So they spend a lot of time really deep diving into these clients and thinking about what that solution can look like. So rather than it being a quick kind of short fix advertising and, put a few different kind of, banner ads on here, it's more around how are we going to think about this whole customer journey and really help you as a business talk to your audience and take them on that journey with you.
Awesome. This is definitely a hot topic that I'm seeing at the moment. I think there's so much interest in LinkedIn at the moment, and people realize the opportunity in this space. But I think there's still, potentially some education needed as well around how people can leverage LinkedIn to utilize all the opportunities there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's still a little bit of stigma sometimes around the platform, and people think it's very, it can be very professional. I'm not sure how to use it, or I don't know how to be on the platform from a personal and a brand perspective. So hopefully that's what we're doing here, kind of trying to break down some of that and help customers and, and just individuals realize the power of it.
Yeah.
And just how quickly it can really help your business or you as an individual to really go from, I guess this idea of from good to great.
If someone wants to get started with using LinkedIn and they don't know where to start, what would you recommend?
From an individual level?
For a business, I suppose. So a business who wants to maybe start communicating with their audience via LinkedIn, is there, a resource that you could recommend or a place for them to start?
Yeah, so we have we actually have a marketing solutions blog that you can tap into to get some really great tips and tricks about how to do this. We also have an organic and paid playbook, which goes into what do you need to do from an organic perspective and what do you need to do from a paid perspective on the platform to win.
Awesome.
So, there's certainly a lot of resources that we have out there in market. We also have a hub that helps you set up from scratch. So if you're setting up a campaign from scratch, like what does that involve? How do you do your targeting? How do you think about the content, the formats, all of that? So
awesome.
Plenty of resources out there.
Great. We'll get some of those links and share them in the show notes as well for anyone that might be interested in delving into them more. So what does a typical day for you look like at LinkedIn?
Yeah, a typical day for me is I always go to the gym in the morning, and that is for me to really get my head in the right space. I often find if I don't, then I end up just kind of with a reel of lists walking into work, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm frantic before I get in. So for me, it's like sacred time. Nice. Once I get into work, normally I'll have a bit of kind of head down time of working on a potential workshop that I'm going to be running, or doing some auditing for a client. And then I'll normally have quite a few different meetings. So with the sales pods, helping, might be briefing calls with different clients for future workshops. It might be just going through then, what's going on with your different clients at the moment. How can I help? We might have an internal training session that I attend. So it's generally a mix of working on workshop material, meeting with the sales team, and then kind of potential trainings and what's going on in the business.
Yeah, fantastic. What kind of goals do you set for yourself in your role? I'm a big fan of kind of understanding how goals and KPIs are used by people in marketing and associated roles. So I would love to kind of understand your perspective.
Oh, really good question. I'd say the things for me is I always pick so we break everything up here at LinkedIn into kind of, I guess, quarters. That's how we work on a quarterly basis. So I always say, what are the 2 projects that I really want to commit to this quarter and kind of give my everything to? And I call them like my big bets.
Awesome.
So these are 2 things that I want to provide more knowledge on within the business normally.
Yeah.
Then I'll have in terms of workshops, setting that kind of KPI. Well, how many workshops is really feasible to do this month? So normally that's around 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And it takes about a week to put a workshop together. They're quite in-depth. They're half-day sessions. And then the other goals I really hold myself, or these are more KPIs, I guess, that I really hold myself accountable for are the delivery of those sessions and making sure, so I always do feedback at the end of it, and making sure that I always get like, I guess, a certain score, if you like,
Awesome.
then I'll know that I've delivered a worthwhile session and I've, listened to the client, been on brief and provided the right solution for them.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. And how do you prioritize your work? So I'm sure like everyone, you have new priorities being popping up or being thrown at you, I was going to say, all the time. How do you kind of manage those changes and check, I suppose, or cross-reference if they're a priority?
Yeah, some days really badly and some days really well. On the good days, I would say I try and use a priority matrix. So those kind of like the 4 quadrant, the high impact, low impact, high effort, low effort
Nice.
quadrant. And I use that generally to think about how I'm going to get through my work and what's really important.
Great.
And if that doesn't work for me, normally I jump on a call with my boss who's in Singapore and kind of just talk through things with him and just soundboard it, to be honest. It's a lot of the time once you start saying it out loud, you realize, you know what, that's actually not really that important.
Yeah.
Or I'd say the other thing is a lot like, is there someone else who could deliver this project with me?
Yeah.
And thinking about giving someone the opportunity to even give a lens, like having a look into my role as well.
Cool. I like it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, today we're going to talk about something that you've been working on recently. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so very exciting. In ANZ, we recently just launched B2B Institute. So B2B Institute, something that's born out of the US for LinkedIn, out of New York, and it is our new global think tank. So we are going to be working with a whole range of academics and researchers from Mark Ritson, people at Ehrenberg Bass, Frank Cassidy, Rory Sutherland, so a whole heap of different academics and researchers from around the world, and coming up basically with different principles that will hopefully help marketers to understand how they can grow their businesses. And the word growth, I think, is really important to this. It's more not just thinking about short-term tactics and things that we can start employing right now to help us win. It's really thinking about if marketing wants to win, and if you as a marketer within a business wants to make sure that you don't just hold your seat at the table, but you start establishing a much greater relationship with the CFO. You start having better conversations with the board. You start contributing to conversations that are a lot more in depth around future cash flow and risk reduction. How do you actually do that? And then how do you execute it within a business? So how do you take this whole, how do you take everyone on that journey with you and make sure that as a business you can actually really execute on it and help to drive that growth?
Really important topics, I think, in there. What will the output of this think tank look like?
So at the moment, we will have a couple of different things coming into market. One of them will be a presentation around some of these key principles.
Yep.
So we're going to be, one of the key principles is from Les Bennett and Peter Field. So you might have heard of the book, The Long and the Short of It.
Yep.
So this is all about balancing short-term objectives with long-term objectives and trying to really make sure that you are doing both and that the business is committing to both. So that's going to be part of the foundation of this. We're also doing some research around CFOs and what they are doing in market. And then I can't talk too much about what else is coming, but they are some of the key conversations that are happening at the moment. And everyone will be able to get their hands on this content within the next couple of months, hopefully.
Great.
We're doing a bit of a roadshow with the content, with some of those key principles of thinking about the main ones will be around the long and the short of it. Fame versus awareness. So really thinking about that brand play of your creative and thinking about how do you go from not just being people being aware of your business, but from actually really having that salience and then wanting to buy from you. And then also thinking about the idea of creative, so distinctiveness versus differentiation, which is something that Mark Ritson talks about a lot. So we'll be bringing some of that into play as well.
Wow, sounds like some really cool things to look out for. Is there a particular spot that we need to be going to keep an eye out for this, or is it something that we'll hear about when it's available?
So there are already a couple of blogs that have been launched. So I'll definitely provide you those links, Louisa, and you can add them to the show notes. And then watch this space. There will be, there is an external, there is a page that we can share with you, a website. So I'll definitely provide that with you. And then in terms of the content that's coming up, watch this space, and there will certainly be things coming.
Fantastic. We definitely will look out for that. Obviously, content is very much your thing. What are you seeing at the moment in terms of content that's, getting results and working for people?
Yeah. So I would say people have been saying this for a long time, but it's still definitely working. I think as a format, video is really where it's at the moment.
Yeah.
What we're seeing on the platform in terms of that has just really exasperated over the last year or so. And also at the moment, I think given the current situation, people are really rethinking about how do they take some of what they were planning to do and turn it into webinars or into a mini video series. So I think there's a lot more of that's going to come given the current situation that we're in globally.
Yeah.
And then the other one I would say from a format perspective, podcasts have really taken off massively. Even just sitting here doing one now, like it's something that's becoming a much bigger part of people's strategy. And I think as many businesses who can get on board with that and think about it as a long-term play in their content marketing strategy. And I really stress that this is not something that is going to necessarily drive you leads straight away. And I'm sure, Louisa, from your perspective on that, I'd love to hear what you think, but it's not a short-term fix. This is something that you really have to be dedicated to and really think about as a piece for the audience that's really going to give them a much broader perspective of how you can really help them and what are you really interested in, and as a business gain some authority, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And look, I procrastinated on starting a podcast from when I wanted to maybe a couple of years ago to eventually starting one mid 2019 for us. So eventually got there in the end, but I was really struggling with the ROI perspective, which I'm sure a lot of people are. If I start this, which is going to cost money because I don't personally edit these, thank goodness. So, there's a cost involved, and how do you get a return on that cost when there's a lot of unknowns and there's no immediate monetization attached to this particular channel for us, for example. So that's something that, took me a long time to get to the point where I just went, hey, I'm in a position where I can try it and give it a go. But I think what I've learned in the months since we've been doing this podcast is that it's more than just looking at audience numbers or, even immediate connection to the return in the traditional way that you might be looking for. And there's actually so many different levels of a podcast where you can get benefit that it's really unique to the organization. So I think whilst that's a little bit vague, hopefully it makes sense that there's so many different angles to it. So for me, for example, it's not just about the listeners. Obviously that's the audience and who we're creating the content for, but there's also other benefits that we can get by talking to 52 senior marketers in a year, and connecting with our audience and our community in different ways. So obviously, Claire, you've spoken for us at the Digital Summit, and now we're doing a podcast, and who knows, down the track we might do something else together. So it's another touch point, I guess, for our organisation, which has benefits as well as being a benefit to the audience to hear all the exciting stuff that our guests work on. So many different benefits that I think you can get from podcasting, and it takes a little while to understand and look beyond the kind of immediate one that you think might be there.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and a really good example you use about the different touch points.
Yeah.
I think one of the best examples of this is Robert Rose and Joe Paluzzi, when they started their podcast, and when they talk about the success of the Content Marketing Institute, they often refer to how the podcast helped them to get bums on seats at their events. That was the thing that really drove people. And, they invested like years in this podcast, but that's what drove people to actually attend the event and see them live. And that's where they made a lot of their money, and then they made their book and all of those things. So it really can pay off dividends. It just takes a lot of hard work, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, and I think it is another touch point. At the end of the day, we're trying to get to that, 7 touch points, 11 hours or whatever it might be that the latest figures are that we need to connect with people. And it is another really valuable touch point. And I think it's one of the very few where we have, full attention of someone for the period when the podcast is on. So yeah, I can see why there's a lot of growth in there, and I'm kind of just kicking myself a little bit that I didn't have the guts to do it a couple of years earlier.
Well, you're doing it now, and that's what matters, hey?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Well, that's really nice to hear about some of the content trends, I suppose, that you're seeing and how content's working for people. In terms of using content on LinkedIn, are we able to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. What would you like to know? Where do you want me to start?
Well, I think LinkedIn, I'm personally seeing a bit of a change from how content is showing up on LinkedIn now. I think, for a few months at least, people have been realizing that there's a massive opportunity with LinkedIn at the moment in terms of, getting visibility of content. And so I guess, if someone here isn't maybe using LinkedIn as much as they want to, or I know I've definitely had conversations with people recently who want to start using the platform more, what would you suggest they do?
Yeah, so I think thinking about the platform as people come to LinkedIn in a growth mindset.
Yep.
So they're there because they want to learn, they want to improve their career, improve their knowledge, and it's all about how do you help them to be the best professional that they can be. So whether that's talking to them about leadership, whether that's talking to them about what they should be doing right now to think about different ways that they can be distributing their content. It's anything that can really provide them with a lesson or a learning that they can take back and start applying to their business. And I think that's what I love about it. I love learning, and everything when I think about the platform, I think about all the content that businesses and individuals put out there. It really is this community of sharing different ways to be a better professional and to be able to do things better for our communities or for our businesses. So my advice would be to kind of take that on board and think about how you apply it to your content. In terms of if you're a business and you're trying to, probably sell a product or a service to people, what is it that you're helping them to do, and how can you create content that speaks to that? So thinking about from an awareness or from a consideration perspective, some blog posts, potentially doing a research or like a white paper. Even things like playbooks work really well, ebooks, guides. People love a good guide or a checklist to help them think about how they apply knowledge. I'm seeing also quizzes do really well. So people love taking self-assessments, right? Like we're all self-satisfying people and we love to know a little bit more about ourselves. So I'm seeing that quizzes work really well if you can do that. And yeah, I think it's really just how much information can you give to someone to make them do greater, better things within their business or for their team or for themselves.
Yeah, really interesting. And I love those examples that you gave. Would you suggest this is mainly through the newsfeed and articles that people are sharing this content?
So thinking about, as we call it, kind of sponsored content or even, organically through your page. There's many different formats that you can use, like carousel ads, you can use video, you can use in-mail as well. And how do you get creative with that? So one of the things that we have at LinkedIn is that I always talk about the image that often pulls through. So say you put a blog on LinkedIn, you'll often see that an image comes through from the blog. I call this your primary real estate. This is the bit that people look at because it's, as you see in the feed, it's pretty big. The image part is big compared to the kind of size of the copy. So I always say we don't have a 25% rule in terms of the amount of copy that can go on there. So really take advantage of this and put a big stat on there or put a quote on there, or rather than just using stock images, think about how can I get a little bit creative with this and really draw attention so that people do click on it or watch it to go through and find out more.
Yeah, great tip. And when we're talking about content on LinkedIn of some of the things that we've talked about here, what should people be looking for when we're looking at results?
So I would take it back to what as a business are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time people don't think about that. They put content out there and then they're just looking at click-through rates and engagement rates.
Yeah.
And they're looking at it on a daily basis. There's ways that you can bucket, or I guess almost your results and really think about them. And I guess it's am I doing this to build a brand for my business? So am I a small business or even a large business who I need to increase that brand awareness that people have about who we are right now?
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then the measurement of that should be pretty infrequent compared to how much you're looking at demand gen or performance marketing. Ways you can look at that is really about how many people am I reaching versus my competitors. And so understanding basically what share of voice you have.
Yeah.
And even how many views do I get? So it's really about, am I reaching enough people to make an impact right now? Are enough people seeing this? As we move further down the funnel, this is when you can start looking at, driving people through to your website. So more kind of around consideration for them to start figuring out more. So this is where you might start looking at more, lands on your website and then actions they're taking from that. And then as we get down more towards the thinking about lead generation, I guess at that point, it does come down to performance of leads.
Yeah.
I would say quality of leads. And this is where I often have big discussions with clients around it's better to pay a little bit more for a quality lead than to get 5 cheap leads that can't be converted or aren't going to be converted. So really thinking about a little bit more about the targeting at that point, the targeting, the messaging, that you're putting into place at that lead generation point. And then in terms of what you're measuring, it's really measuring those leads, but then also being able to separate those leads and nurture them.
Yeah.
So I think people often get confused between content leads and marketing qualified leads.
Yes.
Or inquiries. And that is, again, it's a big conversation that we have. And I'm a really strong, firm believer in a content lead is so different to an inquiry for your product or service. And we need to treat them very differently and provide different journeys for them.
Yeah.
And if we don't, that's where we can actually harm our business more than we can help it.
Yeah, no, really good point. And I think particularly providing different journeys for people on different paths. It's what it's all about really, isn't it? When we look at the customer journey, we've got to remember to take it all the way through. Awesome. What do you see are the biggest challenges that people are facing when you start having discussions with them around their content?
I think ROI is still probably the biggest discussion on the table, and attribution. It's a hard one from content marketing, Louisa. It's still there's no holy grail towards this yet.
Yeah.
There's things that we can put in place, and there's definitely technology from a MarTech perspective and integrations that we can use to help us with that. But has anyone found the true answer? I'm not entirely sure they have. I think the other challenge is selling in brand dollars. So being able to get the business on board with doing branding and not just doing performance targeting. I think that it's a really big one, and it can be quite detrimental if all your money is just going into performance marketing, because it can get to that point where you actually run out of people to speak to, or you run out of everyone's seen that message and they're not converting. So where else do you go? And if you're not capturing or opening that kind of net up and creating more demand, then it can really make the business fall short in the future.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trap, isn't it? I think, the more transparent things have become and the more measurable they've become, the more we focused on performance. But I think, the smart companies are the ones that are equally remembering to build their brand along the way.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. I mean, you look at the biggest brands out there and they're still doing brand messaging.
Yeah.
We look at Microsoft, or we look at McDonald's or Coca-Cola. They don't stop doing branding just because they're big brands and everyone knows them. They understand that there's still a role to be done there.
Yeah, it's a good point that the big guys are still doing that, because I think, the little guys maybe feel that, well, we can't afford it, or we can't take the time out, or we don't have enough resources to do it. But as you say, it's a good point if the big guys who we do know are still on that path as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So how do you organise your calendar, inbox and email? It's one of the questions I like to ask, because I know everyone does this completely differently, and I'd love to understand your approach.
I want to know how you organise your calendar.
I'll share if you do.
So we use Teams. LinkedIn was obviously bought by Microsoft quite a few years ago, and we use their Teams product, which has really helped in terms of my inbox. So I try and have any quick conversations that can be solved by just a quick chat. I try and move them towards Teams. Even if someone might potentially email me, I'll move them over to the Teams chat to finish that conversation, just to mitigate how many emails are coming through.
Yeah, great.
I try, if I can, to block out periods in my calendar where I can work on certain projects, because I am building out these workshops and decks, which can be pretty lengthy, and they need quite a bit of time on them. It's important to have that time to really concentrate and get your head down. You know what it's like when you're in and out of meetings, you can't get things done. So I look ahead in my calendar kind of every 2 weeks and start plotting in, well, what's that time I'm going to need, and try and do that. And then the other thing, which I think I mentioned before, is like, I know I'm the most productive in the morning. So for me, getting my head down as soon as I get in and getting into work is important for me, rather than going straight into meetings. I'd rather do meetings later in the afternoon when I'm, I guess
creative,
when
maybe
I haven't got that headspace to, sit down and write a deck at that point.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of things that I employ. And then from an inbox perspective, I still get caught up in going back to my inbox when I said I won't look at it for the next, couple of hours. You kind of just...
It's hard.
I try, but it's tricky on that one. So yeah,
awesome.
I think that's probably it. Yeah.
Great. Well, I said I'd share as well. So let me tell you what I do at the moment. I've actually changed systems this year, and so far it's working pretty well. So I got down to inbox 0, I think early in the year when that was, which was good. That was very cathartic and felt great. And I learned that some of the emails that sit in my inbox are definitely my to-dos. I think that was no surprise, but also a bunch of them were things that I just didn't know where to put. So I do file all my emails. I can't just delete them and find them later. I do need to stick them in folders, which is fine. But I've now learnt to create a few folders for those things that I didn't know what to do with. For example, if someone sends me an email and introduces me to someone else, I was like, well, what do I do with that email? So now I have an introductions folder, for example. So that has really helped to get the process right. So my inbox, it's pretty good. It's not at 0, but it's kind of around 20 or less, which I'm fairly happy with. It's totally manageable. But the other piece, I don't think you can get to inbox 0 without having something on the other side to control your tasks. So the thing that I've done after using Asana and Trello and Todoist and a whole bunch of to-do applications over the years, I have gone to a Google Sheet and I have created my own to-do list for each day. And something that I'm loving about this is that it's kind of a mix of a list and a calendar. So if I have a podcast today, for example, it's in red in a column. So I have about 5 columns in this spreadsheet. And then horizontally I have the day. And I have actually mapped out, and I do this kind of manually at the moment, but you can copy and paste in groups. So it's not so bad. I've mapped out maybe 3 months worth of days in this list. And so I go, okay, I've booked in a podcast interview today. So that's in red because it's something I can't change. And then for yesterday, there was an item in there saying prepare podcast interview. And for the day this goes live, I have put something in there, or the day before, saying check podcast and then email Claire to let her know it's live. So those tasks have already been added in. So as soon as you confirmed the interview, I went and went, okay, I need to put these couple of things in my calendar, and then I can delete or file that item out of my inbox. So I've got more efficient now with managing my time. And I can then look at my day and say, okay, well, I know that I have to prepare the podcast today, or that I've got, an email going out tomorrow that I need to be involved in, or that I've got an event coming up and here's the things in advance. So I've kind of calendarized my tasks, which I'm loving.
Louisa, this sounds fantastic. I just want you to look at my inbox and help me.
Hey, I've actually written a blog and a template on this, so I can share them with you because it's actually really rudimentary. It's really basic, but I just like being able to see ahead and going, what have I got on? And then I only allow about 5 or 6 rows per day by about 5 columns. So I can still overload myself, but visually it becomes very messy if I start to allocate too many tasks in a day. So I've now got columns. So I've got a column for an event, so an events column. I've got a membership column because we do a lot of member content. And I've got a circle column for our mastermind group. And then I've got an admin and another 1 or 2. But I'm actually putting my tasks in those columns. So I can only really fit in, say, 5 membership tasks a day maximum. Or otherwise I've got to put them on the next day or another time that suits. So it actually helps me to not put in 100 things for me to do in a day.
That's great time management. I love it.
Yeah. So happy to share that link as well in the notes because it's, as I said, it's still evolving a little bit. I think there's some more color coding that could happen, and I'm sure it'd be good to have a massive template that I don't have to kind of somewhat manually edit every couple of months. But it's not a big deal in the scheme of things right now, and it's working, which is the main thing.
I love it. Good on you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been really exciting to have a chat and hear what you're up to, and also delve into LinkedIn and content, which I think are super topical. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Louisa. It's been such a pleasure. It's been really, really nice to reconnect. So thanks for having me on the show. And I look forward to catching up with you next time I'm in Brizzy.
Definitely. Thanks, Claire.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's show. If you liked this episode, please subscribe. My recommended action item from today's show is to look at LinkedIn and see if there is additional opportunities for your brand. Please join me in the Interactive Minds Facebook group, where hundreds of marketers have discussions, answer questions, and I share the latest news I'm seeing in the industry. You can access today's show notes at interactiveminds.com/podcast. See you next week.